Hey guys, this is God of Politics. I'm going to a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to be doing the 2020 election if there is a recession. Now, the official term for a recession is if GDP shrinks negatively for 2 quarters. So if we have 1 quarter of negative GDP growth, that would not make it a recession. But if we have 2 quarters of GDP growth, then it would be considered a recession. And what we are seeing right now in the current situation with the coronavirus is that it is very possible, due to the reduction in the stock price of the tourism industry, the cruise industry, the airline industry, that we could see a reduction in GDP growth. Whether it would continue on for another quarter is another question, depending on how bad the coronavirus gets. But I did do a video on this a couple months ago, and the recession then looked like a much smaller chance than a recession does now. So I'm going to be doing the 2020 election prediction for Donald Trump versus, I'm assuming, Joe Biden. If there is a recession, if if a recession happens, what will the results of these states be? Will it become more democratic? Will Trump lose a lot bigger than he may have otherwise? What are the implications of that? Another thing about it is the media is often controlled by the left wing. So they can, I don't want to say blow it out of proportion, but they can make this a very big deal if there is a recession, whether it actually is or not. So we'll start out by filling off the safe states as always. We'll do the Republican states: Montana, Wyoming, as well as Oklahoma, Kansas, all of Nebraska except for the second district, South Dakota, North Dakota, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Alaska, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and that is going to be all these safe states. So that's 116 safe electoral votes for Donald Trump. And then for Joe Biden, be all these states, including New Mexico and Colorado, they would both be staying safe in this situation. You could argue these states would go likely, but they would go by more than 10 points if there's a very tough economic situation. Also, Illinois would be safe as always. New York, Vermont, Maine's first, and Maine at large. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., and that puts the Democrats at 199 safe electoral votes to Donald Trump's 116 safe electoral votes. And I'll do the likely and tilt states. I think that first Nevada would be a likely state. We saw an uptick in both registrations from Democrats and Republicans. Whether that is due to the caucus or not is another question, but we might see higher Latino turnout if there is a tough economic situation, maybe because of the jobs they're doing. That could make an impact. If there's an uptick in the economy, people will be upset at Trump whether it is his fault or not. And I think that there is some blame to be put on Trump for this. He could have handled the situation better. But if there is a recession, it is undoubtedly going to hurt Donald Trump. We'll go back over to the East Coast here. I do think that New Hampshire, a state that was very close in 2016, would go by a likely margin, but Maine's second district would still go to Donald Trump by a tilt margin. It was the surprise of the night, him winning it in 2016, but I think that he would still be able to win it in 2020, even if there was a recession. I think the voters here might be a bit more independent of the recession. It's a smaller area in terms of population size, and they would still be heavily swinging towards the Democratic side as well. I think Virginia would be a likely margin. I think a lot of voters, the minority of Republicans, wouldn't turn out in higher numbers if there was a recession, or they would just go to the Democratic side. And I think that would be something that you'd have to watch out for. And I think that we saw that the state has become more blue over the years, and with Joe Biden being an establishment figure, he'll be able to do very well in the state regardless. And if there's a recession, he'd do even better, winning it probably by around 8 to 9 points, and that would be a very big result. Now, for the first flip, I think North Carolina would go by a tilt margin. We see that Biden currently in the polls is up by 3.5 points here, and with a recession, I think that this would only get much worse for Donald Trump. You have a Senate election here where there is an unpopular incumbent in Tom Tillis here, and that is going to be very important to think about when you see that Joe Biden is already doing very well in the polls here, better than he's doing in states like Wisconsin. And if you have, I mean, he did win this state in 2008 with Barack Obama, And if you have a similar situation where there's a tough economic situation, people want change, they will turn out and vote for Joe Biden, regardless of what he is going to say or not. People will look negatively upon Donald Trump. South Carolina, I'm going to put as a likely margin just because I feel like Joe Biden would be able to secure the black turnout as well as gaining a bit more support, which would just put this into the around 9 to 10 margin because it was around 13 points last time. And then next we'll go down to Georgia here. I think Georgia would be by a tilt margin. We've seen that this state has been trending, and if you have the Atlanta suburbs where people are losing their jobs, there's less consumer confidence, the stock market is going down, those trending voters in the Atlanta suburbs, those trends are just going to speed up, and those people are going to come to the Democratic side, and that is going to make it a lot closer. But Donald Trump, just due to the fact that it is still a traditionally Republican state, although not very close in some elections, it is going to go to Donald Trump regardless. Next, we'll go into Florida here. I think Florida would tilt. Florida is often very independent of trends that are going around the rest of the country. In the 2018 midterms, we saw that the governor election actually, Senate election flipped, and the governor election was run by Republicans. All of the state and local politics here are controlled by the Republicans, but at the national level, if you have a widespread recession as a result of something that you can easily attack Donald Trump for, it is going to hurt voters, hurt Donald Trump and the rest of the Republicans in Florida, and that would push the state back to the Democrats for the first time. It's going to a non-incumbent since 1924 when Henry Clay won it against Calvin Coolidge, also the last time a Republican won without Florida. But yeah, next we'll go down to Texas here. I think Texas would be by a lean margin. I don't want to put this at a tilt margin just yet because even when a wave year with Beto O'Rourke running, they only got it within 2.5. I think it was around 2.6 percentage points. And I'm not going to put it too much closer than that, but if there is a recession, it's going to hurt a lot of the industries that are growing in the Dallas suburbs, the Houston suburbs, and those areas are often very Democratic anyway, so I'm not sure this would have too big of an impact, but obviously it is still a recession. It's going to hurt Donald Trump, and the trends are going to become more lively. Another flip for the night would be Arizona. Arizona would be by a tilt margin. We saw that in 2018 when the Democrats had their wave year. It surely showed in Arizona. The Democrats control a majority of the House seats here, and they flipped a Senate election with a moderate candidate. And if you have Joe Biden, he would seem like a moderate if there's a recession, and if Donald Trump has had to put a lot of blame on himself by the media, by everybody else, that's going to hurt him, and it'll kind of replicate the wave year situation, and it would make Arizona a tilt blue state. Next, we'll go up to Minnesota. Minnesota would be a likely blue state. I think that a lot of these voters, especially if Amy Klobuchar is a VP nominee for Joe Biden, which I see as a real possibility, a lot of those voters who may have been swing voters before are going to go back to the Democratic side, and I don't really see any chance, even without a recession, of Minnesota going back to the blue column. If Hillary Clinton was able to win it by 1.5%, I don't know why you'd see another 1.5% swing back to the Republican column, because now what we saw in 2018, we saw that the special election, even just the special election, only did go by 10% to the Democratic candidate, and that's going to be an important figure to look at, because when you have a recession here, you'll see a replication of that wave year, and you'll see that the state will go by a very wide margin, similar to what it did in 2008. Iowa will go by a tilt margin, just due to the fact that it did go to the Obama both times in his presidential elections, his promise for change and everything like that, and Joe Biden's ability to turn out working class voters is going to be amplified by the fact that there would be a recession that would hurt a lot of the farming industry, the manufacturing industry that is still pretty lively in these places. Next, we're going to Nebraska, the second district. I think it'll be by a tilt margin as well. I'm not ready to say it's going to flip yet because I don't have too much information about it. But the Democrats could have flipped this seat in 2018 if they didn't run a Bernie bro. And I think that if you have a recession here, it would become a lot closer, possibly even flipping. Next, we'll go down here to Ohio. Ohio would also be by tilt margin. A lot of the voters have less elasticity, I guess I'll use that word, where they're not going to flip back to the blue column just because of the candidate that's running. I think it would be normally by a likely or safe margin with Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. But if there's a recession, it is going to hurt the local economies and manufacturing industries in those areas in Ohio, and it'll have a huge shift, similar to what it was in 2018 when Sherrod Brown, who is pretty left-wing, was able to win in the state, and it will not flip back, but it will definitely become a lot closer. Now we'll do the three Rust Belt states: Wisconsin lean, Michigan lean, and Pennsylvania lean. First of all, with Joe Biden, Pennsylvania is his home state. He's doing well in the polls here. Michigan is also a traditionally blue state, the most blue out of all three of these states that I just put in here. In Wisconsin, while Joe Biden isn't doing as well here, for him to win it by a lean margin, he only has to win it by just over 1 point. And I think that he could easily do that if there was a recession, because a recession is going to be very damaging to a Trump presidency, whether it is his fault or not. We saw that. Sure, George Bush was able to win in 2004 with a tough economy, but many voters are voting for Donald Trump purely based on the economy. They may not like his character, they may not like some of the things he says, but they see, oh, I'm in a good financial situation, I'll vote for him anyway. If there's a recession, they're not going to have that same argument or reason to vote for him, and I believe that reason they'd vote for a candidate who will return it to the sense of normalcy they might see it as that you had during the 8 Obama years, where you had a good economy, a revived economy. And sure, you saw that for the first 3 years of the Trump presidency, but now Trump's ruined that, or at least in some parts Trump has ruined that. So why would I vote for him? That is the thinking that will go through many voters' minds, especially in the Rust Belt, especially in the Sun Belt, these areas that are rapidly changing for the worse or for the better. And it is going to hurt the Republicans. It'll hurt them down ballot as well. It'll hurt them in the Senate elections. And in terms of the presidential election, Joe Biden would win by a margin of 333 electoral votes to the Republicans 205. And you see, even if the Republicans win all three of the Rust Belt states, they'd have to win something else. They'd have to win back North Carolina and Arizona. And that's going to be very difficult for them to do. And if there is a recession, which I think is really, it's a real possibility at this point, you will see the Democrats pull away with a victory, unlike last time. But yeah, thank you all for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.